guest is Mark Minasi.
Today my guest is Mark Minasi. Mark, how are you, sir?
I'm good. And how are you, David?
I'm terrific. I'm thrilled to have you on the show because I have a story to tell you. Years ago, I was the computer.
Wait. It wasn't me. The guy looked like me.
No, this was you.
I heard your
He had
sister. The
darker
terrible
hair.
thing happened.
No, nothing to do with my sister. I had this. I was the computer guy. You know the computer guy that was just basically he sets up the printers and he writes all the programs and he creates new users and so on.
Does the backup.
I was the. Oh.
I don't have a job anymore.
I was, we was a shop had this software called Land Manager. We were the guys that bought that.
You were the guys. I heard it was somebody. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like when I started writing books. Then I thought if I wrote a book, then my name would become a household word and I would become famous. So my first book was using OS 2 1.1. Now both users bought it, so I felt that I swept the market, but it did not make me as famous as I thought. And so I thought, I'll just settle for microfame. If you take 1 million geeks off the street, one of them's heard my name, and I soared to millifame, and I crept my way to like centifame. I think if you took 10 geeks off the street, certainly geeks with gray hair, off the street, one of them would have heard of me. So
that's kilofame in my book. So to finish my story, we were Land Manager was there
show us this anyway.
when I got there, and the rest of the world was on Novell NetWare, of course. But we decided we were going to upgrade to this new thing called NT Server, which I knew nothing about at all until I bought a book, Mastering NT Server. This was your book.
Thank you.
That saved my ass.
Thank you.
And
you know when that book was good? You know that book was good?
What?
Now and then, you just get a topic that you just really want to cover.
Yeah.
I was never a network guy because everybody else was doing network. Mm-hmm. And I kind of liked Land Manager for the following reason. Ultimately, I knew Microsoft was going to figure it out because, Microsoft uses what I call the Monty Python and the Holy Grail approach of taking over a market. So go scope on this.
All right.
How many of you have seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail? Oh, look, it's everybody. Okay, good. How many of you could do it by heart? So there's this scene where the father's in his castle and he's marrying his kid off, and he's telling him the story the kid's probably heard 1,000,000 times about, they told me if I built the castle in this swamp it'd sink, but I built it anyway and it sank. And I built the second one and it sank too. And I built the third one, it fell over, caught fire, and sank in the swamp. But the fourth one stayed. It's the same thing.
That's what you're going to get.
That's exactly right. Geeks can do this whole movie. Anyway, so I says, well, Microsoft does, they want to take Novell. So the first thing they came out with is the IBM PC LAN support program. This is a DOS-based server product, which will give you an idea of how good it was. So that one sank in the swamp. Then there's a mildly improved version of it called Artisoft Lantastic, which I see your eyes light up. You recognize that. It's the network of choice for dentist offices everywhere. And that one kind of sank in the swamp too. Then there's the third one, OS 2 LAN Manager. Protected mode operating system, 16-bit, but you can't have everything. Where would you put it? And that one, good, but caught fire, fell over, and sank in the swamp.
Right.
So NT4, that one stayed. So NT 3.1. So I had a big machine, that was my server machine, for my little office, me and my 2 research assistants. We were using Windows Workgroups 3.11. That was our big server operating system. So I stuck
That's peer-to-peer operating system.
Right. So I set up NT 3.1, expecting it to crash in interesting and funny ways. I figured I have a story to tell you. You know what? It wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad.
Kind of fast. And
it did crash sometimes, but it wasn't bad.
And it was good enough that it was in the same ballpark as Novell. And once you're in the same ballpark, it's a question of who could do the better marketing. And I think the guys with the GUI. Because ultimately, the beauty, I thought, about NT at the time was let's have the same operating system on our desktops as on our servers.
Right.
Don't make me learn, and we still do. I mean, look, right now VMware is a very, very important part of the back end. And I'm not saying anything bad about VMware, but it's a new OS you got to learn. ESX is a new OS you got to learn. If you're going to do Linux, etc., we don't really want to be in a situation where if you're running an enterprise, it's we're going to hire you, Dave. By the way, you got to know Linux and you got to know mainframes, and we're going to pay you $40,000. Right. Yeah, that's not going to happen. So anyway, so that's how we knew that it was going to take off. And I was thinking what to do with this, and I was teaching in Europe. And I was stuck in Munich over a weekend, a rainy weekend in Munich. I did all the things you could do in Munich. I came back and I said, I so want to learn more about this. And the trick to writing a good course is, they say that every writer has someone they write for. Stephen King writes for his wife, Tabitha. So it's like, would Tabby like this?
Okay.
I write for me. When I write a technical book, I say, okay, I kind of know some of this stuff, or of course, I don't know all of it. What questions would I want answered? So if you write a course outline and you know the answers already to everything, you're not stretching yourself far enough. So I sat down and I wrote this huge outline for this course that I wanted to write. And Krista Anderson and Maeve Cregan helped me with the research, and as it was so big, I gave some of them chapters.
Oh.
The book came out, and
This is the mastering.
this is the first mastering Windows Server, the 3.5. We didn't get a 3.1 out on time, and it was just because all the examples worked. I know because we tried them and tried them and tried them, and it was labor of love. I really wanted this to be
that
great.
was the book that changed my life.
Thank you.
I was after that. I'm not an IT guy anymore. I'm more on the development and architecture side. But I was an MCSE for a while, and I upgraded that again, and I did that for quite a long time.
Cool.
And those nice. I remember it was. It didn't assume too much about me. A lot of step-by-step examples, how to get things done, how to install things, turn things on, share resources, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a big thing about Active Directory that people.
Well, this is pre-Active Directory.
But I mean domains, and we had this about Active Directory as well. If you remember, NT3.1 came with all these videos.
Okay.
They had videos of these Microsoft vice presidents with the sweaters standing in front of some outdoor spot, talking about setting up LAN manager, not LAN manager, sorry, NT3.1, and how you got to plan before you do your domain. And it was the same thing with Active Directory. Got to do a lot of planning. Because, the thing when you're building domains is there's a lot of one-way doors. Okay. There's lots of stuff in Active Directory where when you click the button, it should come with a sound effect, the sound of a heavy door slamming shut and a bolt sliding in place. So I think they scared us a little too much about planning. But server's gotten better, hasn't it?
Yeah, let's talk about. So we're at Dev Connections right now, and there's been a lot of talk about.
Well, it's Win Connections, as it turns out. That's the guys I speak for.
Well,
Dev Connections. That's just the dev guys. Those C++ people.
Actually, that's a good question. What's the name of the overall conference then?
I think Connections.
Okay, we're the Connections conference.
Once upon a time, the Windows piece was as big as the dev piece. But what happens? We IT pros have become the data janitors. So
we're Connections now.
There we go. Connections.
I've spent most of my time in either the ASP.NET track or the Visual Studio /Azure track, and you're speaking in the Windows track.
I have spoken. I just finished my last talk.
Including the keynote on, was that Monday night?
Monday night, that was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. It was really good.
Followed Mr. Steve Fox of Microsoft talking about clouds. And the funny thing was that, so Steve gets up there, and I think of him as a SharePoint guy. And I was expecting kind of like SharePoint in the cloud or something like that.
He barely mentioned SharePoint.
He did a credible, interesting job of making the cloud seem not too frightening. But what was fun, though, is that it's kind of a dark background. And Steve was wearing this white shirt, and the way the curtains behind him, I couldn't tell where the shirt stopped and the curtains, and it was like really weird, and I thought, it's fluffy. I said, that must be his cloud suit.
That's cloud.
No, and I asked him, he says, no, I just wore a white shirt, but it was kind of interesting. Meanwhile, I was wearing a black tux with a little bit of white here.
Like a time traveler.
And what would happen was, so they've got the camera on me, so that if you're in the nosebleed section, they've got the big monitor.
Right.
And I was told that because the outfit was so black, you could just see my hands and the head. So I was the giant head from Third Rock.
And you were talking about vNext of Windows.
A server, and everybody focuses on Metro, and that's maybe a story we should do in another show. But the server thing was interesting. The server thing was interesting because I talk to the server guys a lot, and at the MVP summits and
Talk
whatever.
to the server team, the guys that are creating
Right,
server.
right. I'm directory services, but server guys, what do they call them? Server tools, business, whatever. And I kind of get the impression that server was going to be the weak partner here. Because we've got Metro interface and new API and all this kind of
server
stuff.
not getting the hype that that tablet was getting.
So I was invited to a super secret server workshop. About, I don't know, maybe
Well, tell us
15.
what happened there. We won't tell anybody else.
Well, no, it's the absolutely great thing about it is normally there's a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, that makes me never talk. I saw the Metro interface 3 years ago, and I keep good secrets, but it was hard not talking about it. I still booked from VHD 2 years before it actually was announced. So I'm good at secrets. The great thing was they said, well, your NDA is until the following week, Tuesday morning, when Satya, the head of the server tools team, or group, whatever it's called, sorry Satya, whatever your title is, was doing his keynote. I'm like, this is great. And you know what's funny? Is that all the big people under Microsoft, they're still under an NDA.
I noticed
Julie Larson, I can never remember her name.
So Microsoft has gone silent for the next few months. They're letting people like yourself talk about.
It was
They
interesting.
sit back and listen, find out what it is.
Yeah, so Julie Larson Green can say less about it than I can, which is interesting, until the beta comes out, which is probably January or something like that. So what's interesting is that I walk away from this, and I know we don't have forever, so let me just do this as quickly as possible. This is, my words, high availability, low price. All that stuff. You know when clusters first came out, you're like, wouldn't that be groovy? We add this up. Oh my God, $150,000 to create a secure file server. Maybe I'll just buy an insurance policy or
Right,
something
and
like
it's,
that.
it's also a lot of work. I mean, not just the throwing the hardware at it, but
Absolutely.
it's a lot of configuration and it's
Absolutely.
not intuitive.
It's gotten better.
It's gotten better. I mean, when it first
with
came out.
R2, actually with 08, we got the cluster setup wizard, which made life a bit easier. I mean, it's a download under 03, but it's a lot better. And 08, R2 got better, and it offered new stuff, cluster volume shares. But in any case, it's some really good stuff. So here's the deal. Imagine that you're building a big cloud system. And what are you going to do? You got to go buy a lot of storage, right? Well, how do we buy storage? We don't buy hard drives. No. We buy these big, expensive SAN boxes. SAN meaning storage area network. Plugs in with an Ethernet cable or something like that, or fiber channel, whatever. And these things cost like the annual GNP of Paraguay to get a couple of terabytes for these things. What are they really? They're really just boxes that have got drives, the regular old drives you can buy in Best Buy or Office Max. And there's a backplane. Got some kind of CPU, probably Intel. I mean, it's x86 stuff, typically running, I'm guessing, Linux.
Okay.
And whatever their RAID code is. So Microsoft must have looked around and said, wait a minute, we're a software company, we can do this.
Right.
You know where you want reliability and speed, what do? You put a bunch of NICs into these boxes. You got the teamed NICs, one NIC is actually 4 or something like that. What do you get? Well, you get bandwidth aggregation. You get the full capacity of 3 lines, or if one of those guys runs through a switch that blows up, you've got the other ones to back it up.
So these would be the features that they would want if they were, for example, decided to build a gigantic data center and outsource that data center and let other people use it.
Precisely.
And build their applications on top of it.
And as I understand they've been doing that because and I
I
think
heard a rumor about Azure.
yes.
Maybe something like that.
Well, and as you're considering clouds, then consider that they need all that stuff. And so things like teamed NICs, it's just you just go buy $30.
Team Nix is what?
So you go to HP and you buy this really expensive NIC, and it's actually 4 Ethernet
Network
cards
card,
all in one, and it costs like you could buy a Volkswagen for what it costs, and you've got 4 wires that run from one machine over to another, and the value is that like this one you run through that switch, and that one you run through that switch, and that way if any of your switches blow up, you got 4 lanes if all's going well, 3 lanes if not, and if you have all 4 lanes, 1 gig plus 1 gig plus 1 gig plus 1 gig is 4 gigs, or 10 gigs plus 10 gigs plus 10 gigs is 40 gigs, and so on.
Okay.
It's expensive stuff though.
Okay.
The notion is that if you get one of these boxes, or you get a base box, you just go to Walmart, buy a computer, and a bunch of RAM, it's always a good idea with Windows, and you just plug in a bunch of $20, $30 PCI Ethernet cards. Well, these guys are really not very expensive at all. So the base box is almost nothing. The cards, the 4 of them, it's going to be one on the motherboard, so you only need 3 more of them.
Okay.
At that point, we're talking about another $70. Buy some drives, as cheaply as you can, Newegg or wherever you get your drives from. And now you spent what, maybe $1,000?
And you've got the capacity that used to be available only to these large data centers and large
EMC
enterprise.
stuff. You were giving EMC $100,000 for this stuff.
Wow.
10 years ago, and it's just astounding stuff. And you get all the fault tolerance.
So this is enabled, is it made easier by what Microsoft is doing now in their software?
This is Windows 8 does. Windows 8 Server is the way you do this.
Okay, all right.
So that's not always. Sorry, I didn't make that clear. It's that you're buying some generic box and you're putting all this hardware in there,
Okay, so
and you
just
say,
natively
these
supports
4 NICs here.
Okay.
You go into the server manager. You right click and say I want to make a team. You know what? You don't even have to do that. It's one line in PowerShell. So that's another great thing is all the management stuff in Server 8. So we can team these NICs, just cheap NICs. We got to make our own team, save a tremendous amount of money.
Uh-huh.
We could go get like a JBOD box, just a bunch of disks,
Okay.
and plug that into this gray box, and now we can have 8 cheap SATA drives. And I did say SATA, not SAS drives, because a lot of studies show that they're just about as reliable in the long term.
Okay.
Then you go into Disk Manager. It sees 12 disks, something like this. You grab 8 of them, and you create what's called a storage pool. And it's like RAID, but it's Microsoft's version of RAID, and they claim it's faster and more reliable. You can have more resilience and all that sort of thing. Of course, it supports the high plugging and all those kinds of goodies. So that's pretty cool stuff to have. So we're talking about, first of all, high-speed performance with the Team NIC stuff. We're talking about being able to build essentially a SAN-like thing within on a base box for not a tremendous amount of money. We're plugging that all in. Oh, and by the way, there's an iSCSI software interface on every single copy of Windows Server 8. You can actually download one now for R2 if you want to play with it. You can make any R2 box. Maybe it's an R2 Enterprise box. Let me take that back. It may have to be Enterprise.
Okay.
So the big question is really going to be, are they going to be smart and are they going to put these features want standard server as well as enterprise? Are they going to make us spend $4,000 for enterprise server? 'Cause that would be a good way to shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, so I think the point you're making here is that they're building these things for themselves because they're invested so heavily in the cloud. They want to make that a lot easier and reduce their costs.
Since they got it
But
working.
there's this trickle-down effect.
Exactly.
That those of us who don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend, we can take advantage of that technology because that operating system is also available to us. And
And-
hardware, of course, has come down in price as well.
And I think that gives us a glimpse of the future, because what do we see? A while back, they forked Windows. So like Windows 2008 R2 becomes Azure, that's Windows for the cloud,
Mhm.
and it eventually becomes Windows 8. Well, because the cloud's so important, we see a lot of cloud features in Windows 8.
Mhm.
And my guess would be, Azure's changing very rapidly. I've been told, I don't know if it's true or not, new build of Azure every 5 days.
Wow.
So they're, I mean, and you see it, if you, on every few months I'll get a briefing on the cloud, I'll go to some Microsoft spiel, and they'll say, and there's a new thing, we added some feature.
Hmm.
So they're obviously working very quickly. That will top out at some point.
Of course.
And my guess is we'll get back together in Windows 9 or Windows 10 or something along here. So my joke is that Server 2008 is Azure Foundation Server version 1.0.
Ah,
You know, so good. So I mean, good stuff here. And what's even nicer is that if you go back and look at what are the big features that you get from Server, a lot of this stuff seems to point to big companies. And by the way, that makes sense. I mean, hey, big companies. Microsoft wants to sell to 498 of the Fortune 500.
Sure.
They don't sell themselves and screw Apple. You know, so the idea is that they want big company features. Flexible passwords were big company features. ADFS, big company features.
Right.
RODC, all these kinds of things. Good stuff. But for little guys don't buy, Team Nicks. Little guys don't have RODCs.
Mhm.
Little guys may not have the NADs to run server core. This, however, because it's just making something that costs a lot of money as an appliance into something that is cheap under Windows, there's this interesting democratization or populism
Uh-huh.
to Server 8. I mean, where previously, if I'm out teaching a class, it's really, the SMB guys are saying, that's all right, that's okay, yeah, oh, that's really cool, don't care. But I think that everyone will look at Server 8 and say, could use that, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, the riverbeds of the world have, a couple things to worry about at this point.
Right. So most people when you say I don't care about that, what they're really saying is, maybe I care about it, but I don't want to pay the price for that. That's just too much for me.
Well, so let's see if I can come up with an example. I'm going to make one up. So if Microsoft builds a tool that makes it easier for you to manage hundreds of thousands of users, and the scale of it is that you need hundreds of thousands of users, universities can barely use it, Fortune 500s can typically use it, etc. SMBs are just not going to, period. And there's just a lot of, again, ADFS. The whole idea of ADFS is that I've got a secure SharePoint from my enterprise that I interface with my extranet clients on. Well, SMBs don't always have extranet clients. And, whereas like...
SMB is small and medium business?
Sorry, small and medium business, that's right. And so SharePoint was actually, many people don't know this, SharePoint was the last thing, second to last thing that Bill Gates basically ordered people to create. He needed a way to collaborate with Compaq and HP and said, build this thing. And then he got tired when he got onto the HP SharePoint of having to punch in his HP name and address. And he said, find some way to hook these things up. And that's where ADFS comes from.
Okay.
But I mean, these are things big companies use.
Right.
Whereas look, cheap shared storage, high performance, and you have both the high performance and the fault tolerance of the Team Nicks, to use those guys as an example. That's pretty good stuff.
Everybody can use that.
Along the same lines, if you're a Hyper-V fan, Hyper-V gets bigger, gets better. It's got 160 cores it can deal with. It can handle up to 2 terabytes of memory. Every virtual machine can have up to 512 gigabytes of memory.
Wow.
The numbers are just absolutely astounding. Again, little guys don't care, but little guys care about this. Let's say that you've decided to build a Hyper-V box and put the 3 servers that you need on there. You say, well, I'd like to have a little backup for that. So we're working with beige boxes here. So get another beige box. It's across the hall from it. And so you've got Hyper-V running, and you've got these virtual machines running. And the question is, and I'm simplifying, obviously, because I'm talking about 2 Hyper-V boxes where the VHDs, the virtual hard drives, are actually on the Hyper-V box.
Okay.
If we were going to get all snazzy and medium and large size, they would be on a separate box,
Right.
some kind of iSCSI box, one of these shared storage boxes, which could be this gray box we've been talking about, this
Right.
beige box we've been talking about. Let's just say there's 2 boxes, though. And you have this really important server, and you say, I want to copy that somewhere where I can fire it up really quickly. You just put a crossover cable between these 2 servers. You open up the snap-in, and you say, see that server? make a copy of that virtual machine. Bam, over there.
Hmm.
Happens quickly. Or, if I'm in the Atlanta office and you're in the Chicago office, I just take the VHD and FedEx it to you.
Right.
Tell you to copy it right over at that point. So now I'm a little behind. We just do a replication, very much like Active Directory replication, which means any changes are replicated, changes just the differences. And anytime you want, you can just fail right over. It's not automatic failover,
Okay.
but one click and you failed over.
Nice.
Pretty impressive stuff. I mean, that's something that's
Simplified greatly.
it's warmed a lot of people's hearts, absolutely, you know. Active Directory has some cool things. We have claims-based, the old name was CBAC, claims-based access control. Now it's dynamic access control.
Okay.
And the notion there is that instead of using groups to identify who can and can't get to a file share,
Mm-hmm.
we say things like, there might be something about you that's in Active Directory that's not your group membership. Maybe you are a member of the accounting group. So, sorry, maybe you are an accountant.
Okay.
Or maybe your title is accountant. So this is a little bit of a lame example because your title is accountant or you're a member of a group called accountant.
No, I've got a good example for this. I've been doing a lot with claims-based authentication recently, and one canonical example is maybe you have to be over the age of 21 to access this resource. Well, you're going to enter that group on your 21st birthday. You want an administrator to be
Great example.
yeah. adding people to their only job is to add people to this group when they turn
Group
21.
called over 21,
No,
yeah.
you can just do that math. And so
There
if
you
you're
go.
over 21, that's an attribute. Your birthday is part of Active Directory. Has
Great.
nothing to do with group membership at all.
Yep.
But it's an effective way of restricting access to a
Cool.
resource.
Or maybe you don't get access to something in the company until you've been there 90 days.
Right.
So
Exactly.
so we'd be looking at the day that your object was created,
Yep.
do a little math
Or
on it.
maybe you've passed some certification test or whatever.
So really, really interesting stuff. So I mean, to split it up, so first of all, we just use groups now to give permissions.
Right.
We still have groups, but we can add and or.
Yeah. That's
So you
nice.
say we got to be a member of this group and that group in order to make this stuff work. That's pretty exciting. If you're a SharePoint guy, then this is going to sound like claims-based authentication that SharePoint's had for a little while, but
Right.
but
But now it's built up to the enterprise.
right. Next, we can key off not just your group, but anything about you in Active Directory.
Mhm.
Last time you logged on, something like
Hmm.
that. So that's you. The object you're going to get to is going to be a bunch of files and shares. And files can have tags, kind of like keywords. If you ever worked with one of these photo programs like Photoshop or
Sure.
Lightroom or something like that, if I take a picture of, from on Halloween, I tag it with the key Halloween or something like
Yep.
that. Well, that's actually been supported in NTFS ever since Windows 2000. Nobody just uses it. So now it's gotten a lot easier to put that stuff in, but even better, there you can actually put rules on a folder. So when you drop a file in the folder, it scans the file looking for certain patterns. And if it sees a particular pattern, it puts a keyword on there automatically.
Ah, interesting.
That's
Wow.
pretty nifty. Yeah, basically, if you can write a regular expression
Uh-huh.
and you put the file server role on, you can right click any share or folder. I think it's folder.
So I could write something that would scan Word documents. If it contained both your name and my name, it would tag it with the keyword awesome.
There you go.
That would be the first
There you go,
script I would
precisely. Dynamic duo, something like that, that's right. Yeah, precisely. So that's all pretty stuff. So we talked a bit about storage, and there's so much more we talk about storage. Hyper-V, again, gets bigger, gets better. Golly, what else are we talking about here? I know I've got some other stuff. The management tools.
Mm-hmm.
Management tools have gotten better, and I know we don't have much time, we're running out of time, but something I've got to talk about is server core.
Okay.
Now, for me, I've done some Unix, and what interests me about Unix is that the GUI, X-Windows, or X-Window, sorry, you don't say Windows,
Okay.
is something you add on. Thing fires up, and you just get the black box, with the command prompt on it. And you can choose to start up X if you want to immediately, but otherwise, you only just bring it up when you need it, which is kind of cool. So if you think about it. So I've got a server. I'd like to have the GUI to configure it initially.
Okay.
And then I really just have to look at it for 5 minutes a month. The rest of the time I like to not only get rid of the GUI, but turn the whole graphical subsystem off.
Mm.
What does that mean? I got a smaller CPU footprint,
Okay.
smaller memory footprint, smaller attack surface, fewer places where exploits can be found.
Okay.
So the best of both worlds. Unfortunately, when Server Core came out with 08, you had to choose Server Core or full-blown GUI.
Ah.
Of course, the problem is that if you pick Server Core, well, you better like it, because you can't even upgrade it
Mm.
to go to full GUI.
You have to make the decision when you install.
There's a third way, an in-between way.
Mm.
It's you pick.
Ah.
And so with just one PowerShell command, and then a reboot, you can turn the GUI on, turn the GUI off.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And by the way, remember, all this is pre-beta.
Right.
So you get a lot worse or a lot better. I mean, it may be that the GUI could be turned on or off without a reboot, and that would be unbelievably awesome.
Can people get their hands on Windows 8 right now?
They certainly can. If you are a
Windows 8 server, I mean.
any of them. I know for a fact, the place that I go, not everyone, maybe. If you've got access to MSDN or TechNet,
Okay.
then in the downloads, I'm not sure how groovy you have to be to get, whether you need Universal or
Right.
whatever they're calling it. But I know that I downloaded mine from there.
Hmm.
I know also that if you go to Build Windows, is it buildwindows.com? I think it's buildwindows.com, and they've got links to that stuff. I
Okay.
think almost anyone can download betas, or pre-betas, of either Windows 8 Server or Windows 8 Desktop.
Okay. Let's wrap up by finding out where can people find out more about Mark Minasi.
Well, you can go to my website, at www.minasi.com. That's M-I-N-A-S-I. M-O-U-S-E, no, M-I-N-A-S-I.com. And I'm doing some classes. If I don't know when you're going to get this up, but in December I've got a new class about how to troubleshoot and repair and expand your Active Directory. We do 3 things, really. It's a one-day class. One is I talk about troubleshooting DNS, which is the same thing as troubleshooting Active Directory. Troubleshooting Kerberos logons, troubleshooting NetLogon. And then we go to the second phase, which is virtualizing domain controllers. And some of your listeners may know that virtualizing domain controllers can lead, potentially, if you do one thing stupid, there's something, all Norton's horses and all Norton's men can't put your AD back together again. It's terrible. And then the third piece, which I really enjoy, is PowerShell. AD and PowerShell. So the funny thing is I'll walk into a big crowd and I'll say, so we're talking about AD and PowerShell. How many PowerShell black belts do we have? I'll get maybe one hand.
Right.
I say, how many have PowerShell on the list of stuff you really got to learn sometime soon, but you haven't had time? And all the hands go up. I say, great. I'm going to do a sneaky thing. I'm going to show you how to do cool stuff with Active Directory with PowerShell. And in the process, I will sneakily teach you PowerShell at the same time. So it's going to be a long day, but a fast one. And we got a special. There's still a depression rate of not $500 a seat, but $399.
All right. I'll try to get that before December then. PowerShell, by the way, is on my list as well.
You know what? Do it.
I will.
Do we have time for a quick story?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did a class. I have to obscure some names. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But I did a class about AD and PowerShell. And of course, the cool thing is that the idea is that instead of writing these big VB scripts to do something, you can glue the right PowerShell commands together, and you just bam. It's what used to be 3 days of writing VB script and ADSI becomes it's just wonderful. Anyway, so class ended at 12:30, and I'm answering questions about 45 minutes. There's a guy up front. He's just like I'm typing away. And I packed my stuff up, and I'm getting ready to leave. I'm the absolute last class in a conference. The guy says, hey, Mark, come over. I said, hey, how you doing? He says, it's a great class. I said, thank you so much. He said, I inherited this Active Directory about 6 months ago, and it's a mess. There's stuff that doesn't make sense. There's machines that are in buildings that don't exist anymore, dead accounts. It was going to take us a lot of money, a lot of consultant money, to clean that stuff up, and it's all cleaned up now. I said, so you mean you got a plan? He says, no, I did it. While you were talking here, I came up with 3 PowerShell commands, and I said, how much money did we save you? He said, about $1 million.
Wow.
I looked at him. That happened to be the day I turned 54, and I said, with a little tear in my eye, and said, that was the best birthday present I have heard.
Outstanding.
In ages.
Mark Minasi, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dave. Remember, folks, technology can be your friend.